Hi, I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Charlene. Welcome to Empowered, Life Lessons of Everyday Women.
Each episode, you're going to meet an amazing woman who has struggled through challenges both in her home life and work life and has become very successful. Meet Vida, Part 1. Find a mentor to take you to the next level. Vida is a COO of the Smarter Service. Listen to how mentors throughout her career helped guide her success and empowered her to mentor others. Understand the importance of building and maintaining relationships to help you succeed. So grab a cup of coffee, get in a comfy chair, and meet Vida. Welcome, Vida. We're so happy to have you join us today.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm happy to join both of you as well.
So one of the things that we start out asking is, what would you, if you had the opportunity to go back and talk to your 20-year-old self, what piece of advice would you give her?
It's a good question. And I will tell you, there's no amount of money to make me go back to my 20-year-old self. Gosh, step into all of it. My daughter is 22 and she thinks she's supposed to have all of the answers right now and just trying to figure it out and has this misconception that she should know everything. And you really don't know a lot at that age. And so if I could talk to my 20-year-old self, it would be step into all of it, find your mentors, people that see sparks that you haven't recognized yet, and believe them.
I like that. See sparks that you haven't recognized. That's smart. I mean, really, as you age, you always realize that you didn't know as much as you thought you did. I mean, it's a continuous learning curve, right?
Yeah.
You've had an incredibly varied career. You started in administration. You worked in client services. You ended up being a CEO in an agency. I don't even know where to begin. So I'm going to start with, who was your biggest influence?
Oh, gosh. I mean, it's kind of cliche, but my mom, she was a single mom for a lot of years, and she just had a hustle. And I remember the hustle growing up. She just was a never give upper. And I really adopted that. And so throughout my career, it kind of goes back into my comment about my 20-year-old self of step into all of it. There was never a task too big or too small. I wanted to learn everything. And women have that reality, right? Where a man will be looking at kind of the next step in his career and be offered an opportunity. And if you ask him, like, can you do that? His answer will be like, well, they think I can, so why not? And women have a tendency to want to try it or learn it before stepping into something. And so, it was really that with my mom, seeing my mom just kind of bend to the world and take from it what she could grow from and leave everything else behind her. And I really adopted that behavior at a very young age.
I think a lot of women have actually had to do that just because of where society was, and society has changed a lot, but it's still prevalent.
I still think that's true with almost everybody, right? You don't have to know everything to be successful at a job. You have to have the confidence that you can learn what you don't know to be successful.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you say that. And I also think that you do have to just believe that you can figure it out. Or even smarter, that you can figure out people that do know it and then surround yourself with those people, because we can't know everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people that believe that I have to know everything, but you're right. You don't. You just have to know what you don't know and then find the people that can help you with those gaps.
That's 1,000% a life lesson.
So how did you move from administration into client services?
I followed the thing I love to do. I went from administration into new business sales initially. And I lasted in that about 3 months. And I went to the VP of sales at the time. And I was like, I hate this job. I can't take the rejection every day I quit. And he said, going back to my Find Your Mentors, he said, wait. You're not a grower. You're not a hunter. You're a farmer, and you love people. And he said, let's recast your role so that you're not hunting for new business, but you are growing the business. And what I learned from making that transition in my career is that I'm a helper. One of the quotes that always guides me is something that Mr. Rogers used to say, which is look for the helpers. And I'm a helper. I want to help people do things. I want to be helpful. I want to give back. I want to do all of those things. And so as soon as I slotted myself into that client management role, I found my calling and then I followed it.
Wow. Okay. So I really like that. You've realized that you were not a hunter, you're a farmer. I love that phrase. I wish I had known that before, because I had been in a position where I had to be both the hunter and the farmer. And I'm much more of a farmer than I am a hunter. So I really like that analogy.
And I was an entrepreneur, always have been an entrepreneur. I don't particularly love sales. I did also have to be a hunter, but I did find that my relationships, I was in the creative area, my relationships with my clients were very long term, and that was what made me happy.
Yeah. You also were a farmer.
Yes, I was.
Absolutely.
And some of my best friends are hunters. And I remember having a conversation with one colleague, and he said to me, he's like, I don't care what you did over the weekend. I don't want to know what your kids did. I just want to get the sale and move on. And I remember saying back to how that was so repelling to me, right? Because I want to know it all and I will remember it all. I've had the same experience, Charlene, where, clients that I've had are clients for years, and I know their whole life story. Like, I value that. And so it's important for you to figure out what fills you up and what kind of lights your light, and then follow those attributes in your career.
So one of the things that we like to understand is how you manage your life balance between work and home life.
Yeah.
And we know that on top of that, we know that your husband had a stressful job. Yeah. So if you could expand on that a little bit, that would be great.
Yeah, gosh, I don't really believe in work-life balance. I believe that work takes up a huge part of your life. And so you should really love what you do and you should incorporate it. But yeah, my husband was a fireman. He's actually getting ready to retire in November. So it's a big change in our household. So we were very lucky. I traveled a lot for work. We have 2 kids that are now in their 20s. But, during their kind of most formative years, I traveled probably 60% of the time, but I was really lucky in that I had a partner who had a career and a willingness to just kind of 50-50 everything. And so when I needed to travel, I traveled on his days off. When he worked, I was home. So the kids really didn't have a parent home. And then I worked retail for a lot of years. And so I just kind of included my kids in everything and took them along when I had things to do. And so we did a lot of in-store audits and things of that nature. One of my favorite memories is of my son slamming refrigerator doors in a Best Buy because we were launching a new technology. And the way to show that was it was a dual engine in your refrigeration. And if you slammed one door, the other one would pop. And so Ryan would run up and down the aisles, slamming the door to see if they would pop. Drove the retail sales associates nuts.
Oh, but he was having the time of his life.
And very early on, both of my kids recognized merchandising issues in stores. I just included them. And then of course I had tons of friends, some that I'm still friends with today and some that were kind of seasonal in that time in my life that helped and took the kids on when we didn't have another solution. So
that's great. So how did you cultivate some of your relationships to help build your career and be successful?
Gosh, that's a good question. Just being present and trying to be helpful. Building relationships isn't a one-way street where you are receiving something from them. And if you handle your relationships like that, they typically don't last. And so I cultivate relationships by trying to create a two-way street of value and trying to be helpful. Send articles to people when I think of them. I'm already thinking of you ladies and how to grow your viewership. It's just, if you show up human with people and you have kind of skills that can benefit one another and share them, that cultivates great relationships.
I love that.
I do too.
I really love that. I think listening is also part of that, just hearing what people say. And we've talked about that in previous podcasts, but the ability to hear and understand what your client is really wanting Sometimes they say things and they think that's what they want, but you hearing it and being able to feed it back to them in a way that makes sense to them that they didn't necessarily think about, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, it's also hearing them and realizing that you might have to change what you're selling in order to help them. You're not supposed to, and I had a manager do this, trying to push their ideas down the customer's throat. The customer didn't want that. They picked up and left because you weren't listening to them.
Yeah.
So that's important too.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are hitting on something that I think that just globally we're struggling with right now, which is conversational capacity and the ability to listen without waiting to respond, right?
Right. The response right now, and I think everybody wants to be heard, but sometimes it's better just to listen to what's being said and digest it and then come to a conclusion or an idea or something. And I don't want to get political.
Oh, no. But it's truly listening to somebody versus hearing that they're talking and trying to formulate how you want to respond to them before they're even done speaking, right? So,
yeah, we have a whole, my current business that I'm involved with is built on that. We're dealing with older adults who are trying to build their confidence with technology. And a lot of times when they share what their challenges are, they're not sharing the technology challenge, they're sharing their experience. And so active listening, asking questions, being curious about what it is that they're sharing with you is so critical to getting to the root of the experience that they're having. And you can't do that unless you're hearing, not listening to respond, but hearing what they're saying and then taking your own expertise and contributing back to the conversation until you find a solution.
So you talked a little bit about mentorship very briefly, but I know that has been a big part of your career throughout, from the time in administration until now. Can you talk about mentorship and finding a mentor or being a mentor or both?
Yeah, mentorships are the best thing ever. And I have just these people in my career trajectory that I remember vividly, whether I met them 30 years ago or whether they're a mentor today. And people see, I personally am full of self-doubt. I think at least 5 times a day, I don't know how to do that, or I don't know what that is, or I'm not smart. I sit on calls with investors and all these very smart people thinking, how did I get here? And I often find myself reflecting to mentors at different stages in my career who just had a belief in me that I had to choose to believe them instead of believe myself. And so when you're looking for mentors, look for people who see things differently than you. Look for people who know things that you don't know. Do the dumb tasks they give you. I had a mentor early on in my career that made me type a book. And I think the reason that he did that, looking back, and I still struggle with this today, is I think I might be undiagnosed ADD. I have a really hard time focusing and finishing things. I am that girl with 47 projects in her closet that all seemed like a good idea when I bought all the stuff for them. And then we start it, and then I shove it in the closet. I've got tiles, I've got paints, I've got, you name it, I've got it. And I think what he was teaching me was the discipline of focus and holding a thread all the way to the end. And I learned so many valuable things from that project, and my typing skills improved. But looking for mentors that can fill you out as a human or take you to that next level. And sometimes mentors help you to the next stage. Sometimes mentors can help you solidify in the stage you're in. Sometimes mentors can unstick you when you're stuck. And so I think of them as my personal board. Some of them I talk to regularly. Some of them I haven't talked to in years, but I carry those lessons with me, and they're very, very important for people in their careers, but in life too.
So you talked about having mentors. Have you been a mentor?
I have. A big part of my career in my last agency, I was the lead chapter, the chapter leader for women's leadership in Southern California for Omnicom. And my goal was to work with women. We saw this huge divide from individual contributor to leadership. And so I talked a little bit earlier about how women have this very curvy kind of experience in their careers and wanting to try a lot of different things before they feel comfortable moving on. And so I've mentored a lot of women on how to make that jump from individual contributor to leadership in a way that feels sustainable for them. And then also working with organizations and mentoring in partnership with HR groups to create process and policy to scrub out bias. So, for example, you're sitting around a conference room table talking about your next VP of sales, and you have a male and a female candidates, and they both have children. And somebody sits back and says, well, we love that Rebecca, but, it's 60% travel and she's got kids. That's bias. That is Rebecca's decision to make if she wants to have 60% travel. And Bob, by the way, also has kids. And so making sure that that bias gets scrubbed out of the conversation. So I've mentored in a lot of different directions, from individual people to organizations, in helping women grow their careers.
Wow. I wish I had known you when I was younger. I really do. I mean, I can see a lot of value in how you're bringing the conversation, not just to help women, but really to help an entire organization, which is wonderful.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
To our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Empowered, Life Lessons of Everyday Women. We would really appreciate if you could leave us a rating or a review. If you have any challenges or questions you are facing, we want to hear from you, as we value your input and suggestions. And if you have a compelling story or life lesson you would like to share, please connect with us at empoweredlifelessons@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, other social media platforms, or visit us at empoweredlifelessons.com. In our next episode, we will continue our conversation with Vida R. In part 2, as the COO of the Smarter Service, Vida focuses on the challenges of building a startup and hiring the right people.